Hey, what's up, everybody? DH Thorne here, coming at you live tonight on this beautiful equinox evening. The official time of the equinox was about an hour ago, give or take. So right about now, everything's pretty well balanced, you know? Everything's pretty level, pretty mellow. Cool thing about the autumnal equinox is this is when harvest begins for a lot of traditions, for a lot of people in the world. And it's a really good time to take anything that you've put into motion and to give it that little nudge and set it on its path to completion. So, good time to start calling in the harvest. So let's say hello to everybody. We got Joffrey, we've got Nita the Mystic, the Blue Wrench tonight. We got Skeleton Power, what's up? We got Star Ruby Corsi, we got Illuminostic, we got Me Too, what's up, Me Too? And we got Kelly Meadows so far chatting away. And I'm sure we got more people coming in, more people here, so that's pretty cool. Let me know how the audio's going. I adjusted the gain a little bit, so I don't know if I'm louder than usual or about the same. Audio's good? Oh, good. All right, cool. So audio's good. So what's on everybody's mind tonight? I don't really have a lot to nothing new to really talk about tonight. You know, I put some audio into my head. Sometimes that helps to sort of get everything going. I want to remind everybody that next week, a week from tomorrow, I will be making an appearance at the QXT's nightclub in Newark, New Jersey, and this is going to be a pretty big deal. I'll be giving a keynote speech on the subject of, well, we're going to really be talking about shadows, shadow work, stuff like that. So I'm going to be talking about, you know, my experiences with shadow people and working with the shadow and the shadow of the world and, you know, collective conscious and all that stuff. So it should be a pretty good presentation. I do intend on recording it or streaming that presentation, unless like there's a technical difficulty or something. Fleshy will be in attendance, which is cool. He's going to be flying out, and he's going to be coming to that event. So that's going to be a lot of fun. You know, if you want to meet us, then make sure you get your butt to Newark, New Jersey on September 30th. Get to QXT's nightclub. I put a post about it today on was it today or last night? Somewhere on YouTube, talking about it with a picture with all the information you need to get there. So this should be a lot of fun. It's going to be a new one for me. I haven't been to any kind of a club, let alone like a goth club or anything, in going on 20 years, guys. 15, 20 years. I'm gonna say it's been 17 years, 18 years. Like, my wife and I were still dating at that time, so it's been a while for me. It's gonna be a bit of a I don't know, it's gonna be a little bit of a trip. There's gonna be quite a bunch of people from the audience that are intending to come. I think Eddie's intending to come, obviously my wife's intending to come, Fleshy's intending to be there, and a bunch of other people. Actually, I don't want to name them in case they want to keep it a secret, but quite a few people are definitely going to be coming. So that's going to be really fun. And, you know, what's going to happen is there's going to be like a formal event where I'm going to be giving a keynote speech. There's going to be some ceremonial stuff going on with other practitioners. That's going to take, I think it goes from like 8 p.m. to about 11 p.m., maybe midnight, something like that is the official event. And then afterwards, there's like an after party type of deal. So I'll be hanging around the club for at least a couple hours, and if the club is like boring or something, I have a hotel room not far away, so people who are coming to hang out, you can hang out, meet with me. I might be signing a few books. We'll see what happens, but at the very least it'll be a fun way to hang out and get to meet some of the people in the community that are near you and make some lasting friendships, which is something that is really missing these days. You know, I feel like a lot of us are like, you know, our spirit animal is really octopi, because a lot of us just kind of, you know, lurk in our caves and we don't come out very much. So maybe that's a good thing, but, you know, me, I'm a little bit of a social animal, which is weird because I haven't been very social in the last 10, 20 years, but I'm technically a social animal, and being so cut off from people has its ups and its downs. You know, like I guess my ideal life would be to be rich enough, and not that I want to be rich, but would be to be rich enough so that I could have a place in the city and a place out in the country, and then just live in both, you know, just spend a week in one, a week in another. Whenever I felt like being in the city, I'd be in the city. And unfortunately, like, Manhattan sucks. At least it's gotten to suck over the last decades. You know, the greatest time to be in New York in my living memory, maybe there's better times other than this, but in my living memory was in the 90s and the late 80s. Like that was when everything was awesome. You had the best nightclubs, the best stuff to do. It was just shady enough. It was just dangerous enough to be an adventure, but it was just safe enough that you could do it. And it wasn't quite so, I don't know. It's gotten very, after 9/11, it's very paranoid and it's very run down by comparison in a lot of ways. Like last time I was at Chinatown, it didn't have the charm it had in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s, there was a charm to it. Now it's just like an industrial strip mall with Asian lettering. It's not, maybe I should go and see it again. It's been a little while. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I just missed maybe the cool part of Chinatown moved. But Chinatown used to be like around Canal Street was freaking awesome. Soho was cool. Little Italy was cool. And those were like the fun parts, but that wasn't it. Like there was a lot of places to go, and it's just, I don't know. I haven't really felt at home in the city in a while. But all right, so let me get some tunes going, and maybe I'll get to some questions and stuff. Give me a second. So how's everybody's Equinox going? Did you guys feel it today? Do you feel the balance? Do you feel good, or do you feel like it's just another day? I mean, that's a valid way to feel too. I will say that I prefer equinoxes. I'm not a solstice type of person. I don't really care about the extremes when it comes to that. I like the something about the balanced energy of the spring and the summer equinoxes is what feels really the best for me. Summer equinox is cool and all, but yeah, give me that autumnal equinox, especially like the last couple of weeks before the equinox. So August through September, right? Middle August through middle September are awesome. Like to me, that's the, like you have summer during the day, and at night you can wear a light jacket, and it's awesome. I just love it. All right, let me get my music on here. I'm getting distracted. Hold on. So think of your questions and put your questions up if you have any, and I will get to them in a moment. Come on, figure it out what you're doing. Figure out what you're doing. There we go. Okay, yeah, I can get to that. Oops. Nope, don't do that, because then they'll give me a content strike for daring to play audio. There we go. All right, here we go. Good, now I feel a little bit. You know what, my wife and I started watching again. We tried watching it a bunch of years ago when it first came out, but I forget why. We watched a couple of episodes. I don't know if we watched like 4 or 5 of them, and then we stopped. We watched The Strain. We've been watching The Strain again, and it's, I feel like, especially coming in after, like, the 2020s, yeah, that's that's pretty fucking wild. Pretty good shit. But I didn't remember it being that good. So, all right, let's see. So there was a question about tarot card. Oops, of course I shut this off. Let me get so I can focus here. Good. All right, so the question was from Astrological 999. What's your opinion on tarot cards being archetypes of transformation? All right, so I am not like a grandmaster, tarot guy, but I will say that the tarot or the Torah, depending upon your understanding of history, is, especially the major arcana, it's sort of a library of initiation, and it goes through the stages of beginner to master, and it's very obvious how it does this. You begin as the Fool and you end up as the World, and this is the Alpha and the Omega. This is the Ein Sof. This is that. It is actually rooted, according to my research, it's rooted in the Torah. It's rooted in Jewish mysticism. Once upon a time, because of certain, social customs and laws, you could not practice or teach certain things that were of Jewish origin, and so the legend goes the tarot was invented to help teach the Torah to people, without doing it directly and without necessarily using the Hebrew alphabet. but every card of the major arcana is correspondent to a letter and the meaning of, you know, according to my research. And I'm not like an expert on Judaism or Hebrew or Kabbalah or anything like that. I'm just telling you what I've read, and you can take that where you want. Now, Damien Eccles has a fantastic video. If you can find it, you go to his channel, talking about the tarot and going through each card and what stage of initiation it represents. And watching that video, and of course knowing what I know about tarot and using it, I concur 100% that that is what it is, because when you understand that, you then recognize that the four elements of the minor arcana, and we're talking about the four worlds, the four elements of Kabbalah, again, it's all in there. It's basically a Kabbalistic, okay, Kabbalistic roadmap, and it is divinatory. There's no question about that. It's just that the way it works is a little different than, you know, astrology, for example. And it is very useful, and it's also useful for spellcasting. So I do enjoy the tarot for the same reason you might enjoy the runes or anything else. Lately, I've been getting into the I Ching, and, you know, or the I Ching, depending upon, you know, which dialect you like. I've always had a fascination for it a little bit, but I never got into it when I was younger enough. Like, I dabbled in it a little bit, but now, like, that's my jam. I like the I Ching because I like that it's not about what's going to happen. It's about where you need to sort of focus your wisdom, like how to approach something. It doesn't tell you what's going to happen. It just tells you, you know, it sort of tells you what to look at. And that's really how you should approach all divination. You shouldn't treat it as a fortune-telling device. You should treat it more as a, you know, what am I not looking at? Like, what am I missing? Or you know, what's the temperature gonna be, so to speak? Like, you're getting a temperature reading on something so that you know what to do. It shouldn't be like, don't ask that. You can, people do, but I don't ask tarot questions like, you know, will this happen? Or should I or shouldn't I? I mean, I do, but that's not really what it's for, right? People do it and it's fun and it works sometimes, but really tarot and I Ching and even the runes and all that stuff, in my experience, you're meant to be asking questions like you would ask a wise sage who might give you advice on how to proceed. So instead of asking, you could ask like, should I do this? But yes or no questions don't really work with the I Ching. It really should be, what if I do this? So for example, what if I go to this event at QXT's on the 30th, right? And I asked that question and the answer I got was perfect. It was like, okay, this makes total sense. I'm going to now follow this advice as best I can and take that with me going forward. And it's good shit. It's good shit. Okay, it works really good. Another really good resource for the tarot would be, oh shit, what's his name? Jodorowsky. What's his first name? Alexander? Fuck, he's one of my favorite guys and I forget his name. Well, the guy who almost did Dune, right? He did the movie The Holy Mountain. He is really, 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 like, the tarot is his thing. He does readings all the time and he likes using a very classical deck for it. Check him out. He is really, really good at this stuff. And he's got a really kind of like traditional view of it in a good way. Like, it's really, really good stuff. Yeah. Okay. So let's see what other people's comments and questions are. So I don't know. Let's see. Scody brings up the Queen. She says, balance is the vibe. Queen Elizabeth dies, heralding a major shift in power structure, but she herself is just another subject to the Conqueror Worm. Yeah, it's true. Another lever of power for the great demiurge, if we will. You know, humanity, just when you think we're starting to get, you know, somewhere with humanity, right? Just when you think like, okay, like the worst we got to worry about is a little intolerance or something. Just when you think that you got like everything sort of like okay, the fucking wheels fall off, and let it be known that those wheels are falling off on purpose. This is everything that's going on right now. People are going, oh, these people are stupid. They're not stupid. You're stupid. These people are not stupid. They know what they're doing. They know they're intentionally collapsing systems. They're doing all this stuff. They're trying to drag you kicking and screaming into their plans. And on some level, you got to laugh at it. And on another level, I wish people would wise up to that. I really do. Astrological asks, have you ever done a working with the 4 angels of prostitution all at once, or just separately? You have a whole book on Lilith. Okay, so the book is not on Lilith. It features Lilith prominently. My book is actually about vampirism, and it approaches vampirism from the current of Lilith as the matron of vampirism. Now, you could envision a patron of vampirism. A lot of people would go with Osmodeus with that, or Osmodei. But Lilith, by the history books, is sort of like, you know, history's first vampire as well. So Lilith is by many accounts. So Lilith is really like, you know, the matron of the vampiric current. Okay. Now, I haven't specifically worked with any of what you've described. I don't work with many other people's systems or beliefs. I like to sort of take a clean slate when I approach my work with spiritual entities. I don't try to, I like to be inspired by other people's works, but I don't like to emulate them too much. I feel like everybody gets their own subjective perspective on something that is objectively true. Meaning, when you look at the sky, someone says there's a rainbow up there. Everybody can look at that same spot in the sky and they'll see a rainbow. But the rainbow they see is their own. No two people see the same rainbow. Because there is no rainbow out in the sky. The rainbow is actually an artifact that appears not just in your mind's eye via some spooky woo metaphysics. I mean literally because of the way the light is refracting. There is no rainbow in the sky that everybody's looking at. There is the same phenomenon which makes people see a rainbow in their eyes. Okay? It requires a certain kind of visual ability to see a rainbow. Cameras can usually see it, and so on. But it is not an objective rainbow. It's an objective source that refracts and manifests a rainbow in the visual field of the individual. Now, why does it have to do with spiritual shit? Because in my experience and what I teach and what I practice is that there are the spiritual entities that we encounter are like those rainbows. There is an objective entity. I prefer to call them like archetypes or masks or any of those kinds of words for the divine. So you would say that in a lot of ways, my spiritual philosophy is heavily influenced by Advaita Vedanta and Hinduism, but also Neoplatonism, Gnosticism, and all that stuff. But the Hinduistic, the Advaita Vedanta style view, the Hindu style view, is that all of these deities are masks for the same ultimate divine. And newsflash, so are you. You just forgot. Okay, that's mortal ignorance. You've forgotten what you are. You think you're just some dude or some dudette, you know, with a meat suit. Like you don't realize that all of this is the same divine reality, the same divine dream. This is not who or what you are. You are the thing that knows that. And that thing is the divine. And it's existing in a state of ignorance right now as you and me and everybody else. So the deities that we encounter, some of us only encounter them as psychological artifacts, while some others will encounter them as theistic realities. Neither of them are wrong. Neither of them are objectively more right than the other. Both are true and neither are true. The truth transcends both extremes, okay? Both extremes are both inadequate by themselves, and even when screwed together, that's not accurate either. The truth is, these entities are projections in your mortal ability to comprehend. There's a lot of language here I could go through, but I'm trying to keep it simple. Not because you're stupid or anything. I always rant on these subjects for hours. So the spiritual entities that we encounter can seem completely psychological and imaginary on the one hand, or be terrifyingly real on the other. And it really depends on a lot of different factors which extreme you land in. I'm usually somewhere in the middle. I've experienced some crazy supernatural crap I can never explain. Not rationally. Not in scientific rationalist ways. But I've also had a lot of success treating them as something like psychological constructs. Both will work, okay? So which one you land on doesn't matter. The thing I would warn against is to think that it is only one or the other. That's the error is to land in only one of those fields, to be dogmatic and limited. When you become dogmatic, that means you are closed to possibilities. That's never a good approach. Oh, super chat from Patchwork. What's up, brother? Sounds like some of the conversations I've been having with Inanna about being our own divinity and all. Yeah, I mean, Inanna, Lucifer by some people's standards, depending upon how you classify things, although I see Enki more as a Lucifer archetype. But Inanna being Venus, right? That's, you know, Venus being the mirror, you know, Inanna being the mirror. It's very, very powerful symbolism. You know, Inanna can reveal to you your absolute divinity. Okay? For sure. But the problem is that vanity tends to creep in that. When the beginner learns that they're the divine, what happens? What happens when you first come to believe that you're God? Well, if you're not prepared with experiences, that goes to your head real quick and you get a complex. You turn into an asshole, basically. And I don't mean an asshole like I'm an asshole. I mean an asshole like, you know, you start a cult and you fucking tell people what to do and you become a guru and all this other shit and, you know, all this kind of crap. And it can really kind of, there's nothing wrong with doing those things. It's the reasoning with it, right? Like there's nothing wrong with being a guru or leading a group of people. The problem is when you think I'm God and you're not, or I'm God and you guys don't know it, and therefore I'm this and that, and there's like this hierarchy that forms. That's when it gets not okay. At least that's what I would avoid. So let's see. What's up, Atropa? It's okay that you're late. Don't worry about it. Hopefully we get to see you in a week or so. So I know you're planning on making it, so that'd be really cool. A little bit of yawn. CJ, what's up? Siege is going to be there unless he changed his mind. Siege says he's going to be there. By the way, how's the audio? Is it too loud or is it about the same as always? Just let me know if, let me know if I'm up here. Is it too loud? If should I just talk normally? Should I keep yelling in the microphone? Just let me know. I upped the gain a little bit, but my audio's fine. That's what I've been told. Okay. All right, let's see. Astrological's got a lot of questions tonight, which is good. Gets me going. But CJ says he's coming. I hope to see him, and hope he comes all dressed up like he did in some of those photos. I don't know if he's bringing a girlfriend or what, but those photos he put on Discord, dude, those are freaking awesome. Like you're gonna show us all up. You're gonna look like you know, the King of Hearts or some shit. It's gonna be cool. All right, let's see. What's your opinion on the father and mother archetype being present in all major religions? Shiva, Kali, Lucifer, Lilith, all that stuff. Okay. Again, we see these things repeating because not because Lilith and Lucifer are married or some shit. Okay, there are many different mythologies that don't say that, and then there's some that do. It really, really depends on the mythology you like to ascribe to. None of them are objectively true. They are all meant to be fingers pointing at the moon, so to speak, in the Zen parlance. They're all meant to be mythology that represents something that is enigmatic, something noumenal, something you can't touch or see directly, okay? They represent a pattern, an archetype in both nature, in spirit, in human psychology, in all of these areas. There is like a fractal self-similar pattern that repeats over and over and over again. So there is a tendency for creators of mythology or discoverers of mythology or whatever, or for these entities to come to us via recognizable mythological patterns. Now, my very first channeling, which wasn't a very good, when I say it wasn't very good, it wasn't a willing channeling, okay? It was like a possession. Very first channeling, when I was like 13 years old, when that entity started speaking through me, literally the first things it said after a brief introduction and like spooked the shit out of people was literally to tell us that it was going to be using terms, stories, and things from the cultural references that we grew up to understand. It said, I'm going to call myself an angel, but I am not an angel. I'm going to talk about God, but it's not the same God. I'm going to be talking about things in terms that you can relate to, with things that you've been taught, with mythology and stories that are already pre-programmed in your collective inborn conscious. Everybody has access to this to some degree. If you live in this world and you're part of this culture, you get some of it. It's unavoidable. So everybody's got like this same like MS-DOS style operating system that is our collective culture, our collective conscious. And this means that the same patterns will repeat. And the divine speaks to us through that. And it speaks to us through that, through the masks of different entities, even living people. You know, there's this sort of fun, playful saying that Hindus might use where, you know, you recognize Shiva in, is it the mailman or is it Shiva in disguise? As someone put on my Facebook just recently. They quoted that because it's such a good quote. Okay, and something in reference to what I was saying about gurus and stuff. Because the divine will speak to us through unwitting messengers or through witting messengers in ways that we don't necessarily see all the time. You know, a pebble that catches your toe on a path can be a message. It can be a symbol. It can be something to remind you. So the divine reveals itself to us in all of these kinds of ways. Someone, you know, like watch somebody, I guess like Eckhart Tolle, right? He will talk about all of these things, and he will not deny the possibility or existence of spirits or angels or entities or ghosts or anything. He'll say he's never experienced any of that. But in his view, it's all the same source of life, all the same divine, all of the same things. And they all, you can tell when they're genuine. If they're genuine, you can tell they're genuine because either by direct or indirect means, they always lead you back to the truth of what you truly are. So, you know, if you encounter a teacher who talks about spiritual things and their gimmick has nothing to do with telling you that you're the divine or somehow a descendant of that in such a way that you see yourself as an extension of it in some capacity, they're probably not to be trusted. Different traditions get you there different ways. Some of them get you there through extreme acts of right-hand path humility. I hate that method, but it's fine for those who need it. I think it's stupid. I think it creates shadows. I think it's very detrimental, but some people need that. Some people don't trust themselves, and so they need an externalized God to lead them to themselves. That's fine. I don't like it. Usually comes with a yoke of morality attached, and I don't mean like common sense, like we shouldn't hurt each other. I'm talking about like, you know, don't eat meat on this day, and you know, if you're sexually active, you got to be this way and that way. You know, it turns into a morality thing, not into a practical or pragmatic thing, and that's where I kind of draw the line, right? So for those who need that, it's there. For other people, there's more passive ways. You have like Zen Buddhism, you have Hinduism, you have all this stuff. For other people, there exists this left-hand sinister, unorthodox Vamchara method, okay? Where you go against the orthodoxy, because the orthodoxy has a tendency to vilify the divine by trying to get you into like an ascetic life where you forego pleasures, because to be brutally honest, the divine is enjoying and experiencing a sadomasochistic orgy of self-masturbation right now. That's what you freaking are doing here. Some people say, oh no, we're trapped here. We're trapped sparks of the divine. We're trapped sparks of the monad. The demiurge trapped us here. And you know, if that story gets you going, that's fine. But by viewing this as a prison, okay, you are making an enemy of yourself. And that doesn't mean you won't find liberation. It just means that you now got to go through yourself as an enemy instead of as a willing and, you know, helpful participant. There will always be conflict. That's part of the nature of the mortal experience. That's not the problem. The problem is that you're supposed to transcend that conflict. So that conflict is seen as something part of the experience, that it is not what actually limits the experience. Okay, conflict is what gives it flavor. Conflict is what makes a clap possible. If two hands were not in conflict with each other, as I've often said, you can't have a clap unless both hands are in conflict. If both hands are going the same direction at the same time at the same speed, nothing happens, right? There's no clap. So there has to be some sort of conflict. Now, even though both of these hands are in conflict, they're cooperative in the effort of what? Doing a clap. So they appear to be in conflict, but they're actually in cooperation, aren't they? This is the paradox that you come to realize that all of mortal reality is like that. The stubbing of your toe and the stepping on a Lego, as horrible as that is, that serves a purpose, not a purpose like it must be done or like there's a higher purpose. I mean, it serves the purpose of giving meaning to the pleasure, okay? It sort of evokes pleasure out of the pain. Without that pain of stepping on a Lego, you don't get the pleasure of, well, I don't know what the opposite of stepping on a Lego would be. No, I guess it wouldn't have to be, okay, eating a lollipop or something, you know. So, yeah, you can't have a fun experience without some kind of conflict to resolve. You know, so think of it like this. This experience is a dream of the divine. It's dreaming that it is not divine in order to come to terms with its own immortality. It's having a mortal experience so immortality takes on meaning. And it's not that it has to. It's more along the lines of it does it because it can. Because it's timeless, it is eternal, it is boundless, it is everywhere and everything. So if it is possible, and then it is done. It's inevitably done. You know what? Give me 1 second. I gotta grab something that I gotta fix. Talk amongst yourselves. I'll be right back. All right. Sorry, I'm back. I had a super, really annoying hangnail. You know, I like that better. Hagnail. Let's call it a hagnail. I had a really obnoxious hagnail just now, and it was like bothering me. It wouldn't go away, so I had to snip it. I transcended the flesh. Yes, I floated away. So. All right, let me back up a little bit and see what kind of comments we got. But yeah, astrological, to finish my answer to your question, you're going to see that over and over because it's a natural part of life, but it is also an important metaphor beyond just mommy and daddy. It brings us back to not the duality as in separate dualities, but the duality in the diversity of polarity. And that polarity becomes, as I said before with the conflict, when those polarities interact, things happen or appear to happen. One analogy that I heard, I think it was Alan Watts said it like this, that one way to look at this mortal existence, and I'm paraphrasing, and I don't think he would have put it this way, is to think of it like a dog chasing its tail. So long as you are chasing your tail around and around and around and around, you have a mortal experience. Once you give up on that tail chasing, the spinning stops and you just relax, you lay down, whatever. It's this constantly trying to see the back of your own head. So you're twisting your head around, that's creating this illusion of mortality. It's only when you relax and let go of your delusions that it all becomes clear. So this mother-father archetype sort of harkens back to this idea of divine masculine and divine feminine. And that's a whole other like ranting conversation, because a lot of modern idiots get offended these days when you have gendered stuff like that because they're stupid and don't know what this really means. It has nothing to do with whether you got an innie or an outie down there. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with whether you wear a dress or not. It has nothing to do with any of that shit. It has everything to do with polarity concepts. One of the most important things is to recognize the way the divine manifests in a sort of hierarchical descendance into mortality. It begins as this unified every nothing, this pure awareness that is aware of nothing specific. So it's aware of everything to the point where it's not aware of anything. It's like knowing everything at the same time. It looks like nothing because it's all together at once. It doesn't make any sense. It can't exist that way. You have to separate eternity for it to make sense. So the divine being perfectly aware of itself is actually no different than when you're unconscious. Doesn't mean you're not aware, it just means you're not consciously aware. So then the divine must become conscious of itself. Awareness, aware of itself as being aware, that is divine consciousness. It is the first kind of a clap. It's the first wrapping around and touching itself. Imagine, you know, an entity. Imagine your hand like by itself, right? This would be the divine in that state I talked about before. It's an open hand, right? This is the divine aware of itself. It's rubbing, it's touching, it's hitting, it's curled up on itself and it's aware of itself. That self-awareness is that first kind of duality. That doesn't mean it knows anything about itself. It just knows I exist. There's an I feeling. And it usually starts as like a question. What am I? Do I exist? It's a question that answers itself. You can't ask the question, do I exist, without answering the question. It literally answers itself to even ask it. And as the divine descends through the layers, the levels of consciousness, it then descends down into an enigmatic consciousness of itself. But that consciousness is limited. By definition, it has to be limited. Think of it, this is the meaning sort of that, one could say, the pyramid shape of the all-seeing eye, but it's sort of backwards. As the divine descends down into the mortal state, it becomes more aware, more consciously aware of specificity within itself, but it becomes less attentive to the non-specific that it knows about itself. If you close your eyes and enter a very deep transcendental state of meditation, you can be aware of awareness by itself and lose conscious awareness of all of this stuff. You can go into like a la-la land that it's not even dreams. Like, you're not even dreaming about anything. You're just there. It's just an entity existing within itself. There is no time, there's no space, there's no this, there's no that, there's no me, there's no you, there's just existence existing. Okay? But then you can start to have ideas. You can start to visualize things. You can have out-of-body experiences. You can have all kinds of crazy shit. What people would call the astral world is what I'm getting at. Okay? The dream world. Then as you descend into more and more specificity, then you get locked into this mortal realm of total limitation where you're stuck here believing what you believe about yourself, about the world around you. And in order for that to happen, that like connecting touch has to penetrate, and it has to become like a masculine feminine union of, object and subject. You have to be having an objective and subjective experience of yourself as just this little human being, forgetting you're everything. Because everything that you experience is not what it is. It's a superficial mask of what it is. This includes all the deities and all that stuff. So there's a lot that can be gleaned from this masculine feminine conversation. A lot more than just mommies and daddies and making babies. And, one of the problems that I have with people who take mythology too literally and become theistic is that I'll have people go like, oh, Lilith is the mother of all demons and blah, 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 blah. And now mythologically speaking, that's true. But that mythology is meant to be a finger pointing at something ineffable. It's meant to be a finger pointing at something about divine reality that cannot be expressed by direct words. It's not meant to be taken truly literally. Just like when Jesus said he was the Son of God or whatever, it wasn't meant to be, I'm the only son of God, or I'm literally, God fucked my mother, or anything like that. When there is an understanding, especially in ancient mysticism and spirituality, that if you were a son or daughter of a deity, it wasn't necessarily a literal meaning. It wasn't meant like you were a child in the physical sense. It meant that you are like the same way your fingers are children of your hand, okay? Like a child is a hierarchical relationship, not necessarily a biological one. I guess that's the best way to put it. So you're like an offshoot, you're a mask for, you're an extension of, right? My index finger is an extension of my hand, my palm, my arm, and so on. My index finger is a child of my arm is a child of my body is a child of what? Right? So this whole Lilith is the mother of all demons myth, taking that deeper understanding with you can be useful. Now, the story of like Lilith or Lucifer and all that, these are all corruptions and adaptations, guys. Everything you see in modern demonolatry and all this kind of stuff, these are all corruptions and adaptations of a combination of dumb shit that medieval Christians did and misrepresentations of pagan and heathen lore and mythology. If you're a purist, you don't want to deal with demonolatry at all. Not the way we do in the modern Western world. If you're a purist and you want to do things by the book, the way antiquity and the way history tells us, you want to get away from the corruption, you should be focusing on learning your mythology, the real ones, like as in go back to Sumeria and Acadia and India and in all of these places and learn their mythology, and then pick up a pagan practice where you work with those things. If you really want to do it like I'm not being deceived by Christians or something, that's what you have to do. Now, if you're more open-minded, where you don't need to do it that way, I'm able to look at these corrupted mythologies, see what the truth was that was bastardized and corrupted, and then take these corrupted myths, keep the things I like about them, and then hang them back up on the divine as masks that I can interact with. It sounds like chaos magic because a lot of people think chaos magic means do whatever the fuck you want magic, and that's cool, but that's not quite what it really means. It's what it kind of become, but that's not what it originally meant, really. You know, it's like just eclectic magician stuff. You just, if you believe it, it works, you know. But that actually has no meaning at all if you don't understand the undercurrent of reality that makes that work. You know, it kind of drives me up a wall when like a postmodern chaos magician comes along and is like, oh, well, if I believe it enough, it'll work. Why? Why would that be the case? You can't tell me why, then you just sound like a fruit, like everybody else who believes in, like, you know, any other religion. You just sound dogmatic to me. Or you sound so open-minded that your brain fell out. If you can't explain to me why that would work in a way that is rationally non-objectable. In other words, it may not be true, but at least I get why you think it. Like, I get why someone would think that. Maybe I do too. I don't know. I have a problem with it. Yeah, some people would say, oh, well, that's because, Thorne, you're too wrapped up in being rational, and if you would just let go of rationality, you could do anything you want. Okay, proof's in the pudding. Prove it. Prove it. Prove that just by believing in something. How do you believe in something on purpose? Can anybody answer me that? Can anybody in the comments tell me how you believe in something on purpose that you don't believe in already? How do you force yourself to believe in something that you don't already believe? How do you make yourself? You just have to believe hard enough and you can do anything. All right. What does that even mean? That sounds ridiculous. Okay, let's see. Yeah, CJ says, whatever truths can be put into words will never be the whole of the truth. We make a story of reality as a metaphor to access deeper revelation. Yes, very true. Very well said, Eddie. The entities are sock puppets. The sock is made from your own subconscious. Yes. Just like your dreams, okay? I've had this conversation with my wife today. She woke me up to tell me about a dream she had that made her question free will or something. And of course, the first thing I got to do first thing in the morning is like do a freaking rant about free will. And it was a fun conversation. And I asked her, like I would ask anybody, when you have a dream, are you that character in your dream? Of course not. You're not that person in your dream. If you dream about yourself being chased by a wolf through a dark forest in the middle of nowhere, you're not the person being chased. Or at least you're not limited to that. That's for sure. And that wolf, it's not you. That wolf is you. You're doing the wolf. The wolf is your doing. The forest is you too. The whole thing is you. It's all happening inside what? Inside the dream. And who's dreaming the dream? It's certainly not the person that you're pretending to be in the dream. They're not dreaming it. What's the difference between right now? Why do you make a difference between right now and those dreams? Oh, well, this reality has things I can... that's no different. When you're dreaming, you think that's real too. It's no different. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just recognize this is still a type of dream. This is a different kind of dream. This is something I can easily tell you and admit. It's not like I'm trying to say it's all the same dream. I'm just telling you there are dreams that are mortal dreams and there's dreams that are not mortal dreams. Uh-oh, I recognize that logo. Oh my goodness. Demon Scary, tell me, sire, how to cast Fireball. Question, in your opinion, what's the most misunderstood non-Christian myth? Oof. What's the most misunderstood non-Christian myth? That sounds like a loaded question. If you know what, I may have to save that for when I see you in person, and then I'll tell it to you in person. What is the most misunderstood non-Christian myth? Oof. I mean, I don't know. Let me think. I don't know. Possibly it might be the mythology around Hades and Persephone. That might be the one. Because a lot of mythology, there's this problem in our modern world. It's a very ignorant position called presentism. The official name of it is called presentism. And this is when we examine things from antiquity through a lens of modern sensibilities. This is when you look at people from, you know, some prior era and judge them as bad guys based on current standards, as if societies and moralities don't evolve, pragmatically speaking. Or that the values that we have today are supposed to be a value that was had in antiquity. It can sound to someone who suffers from presentism like it's reaching or grasping at straws when we sort of rationalize the activities of ancient civilizations as not being immoral compared to today's sensibilities. People will look at the past and be like, oh, look how patriarchal they all were. They were all bad. Well, this is under the assumption that everybody back then saw it that way. I don't want to get too deep into this controversy, but when we look at the story of Hades and Persephone, or Medusa, or any of these stories, through presentism lenses, you have a problem where those myths become bad. Now, one other issue that we have, a lot of these myths have more than one lineage. You can have several different tellings of the same myth, changing little details. So, for example, maybe an easier to understand example is the myth about Arachne and Athena. In one telling of the story, Athena's a bitch. She's a fucking cold-ass bitch because she encounters this woman who is really good at creating tapestries. And she's so smitten with her skill, but also jealous, that she wants to challenge Arachne to a contest to see who's better. And of course, Arachne wins. It's like the devil went down to Georgia, but, you know, Greek edition. Arachne wins, and she wins. So in the one telling story, she wins. That's it. Athena gets pissed off and punishes her and turns her into a spider. Okay, that's fucked up. Athena's a cold ass bitch. Version 2, all the same things I just told you happen, except this time Arachne's tapestry isn't just better. It depicts all the times that the gods were cruel and unfair and hypocritical towards humans. Oof, Athena's really looking like a bitch. Okay. Well, there's also a version of the story where we learn that Arachne's skill was given to her by Athena. And Athena should be at least grateful and respectful of the gods for giving her such a talent. In that light, Athena's outrage makes a little bit more sense. It's still a little effed up if you think about it, but it's not as effed up. It's kind of like, hey, I gave you this skill. I taught you to be this. I inspired you to become the greatest spinster in the world. And you repay me by insulting me? Become a spider, bitch. So depending upon the telling of the story you're going with, you're gonna look at it differently. The same thing applies to Hades and Persephone. In one telling of the story, Hades kidnaps a young girl, too young for him, who's the daughter of Demeter. And, you know, it's kind of like molestation and rape land, okay? Especially for our modern sensibilities. Of course, back then, things were a little different. If someone was old enough to make it a baby, then it wasn't really wrong to marry them. You go back into antiquity, you know, an unwed female like what, 15, 16 years old was unusual. Usually had kids by then. Not always, but usually. It was usually safer to have kids young because you were healthier and younger and could do it, right? So it wasn't that weird for like an older male to marry a young female because the older man was established and had money and power and all this stuff, and the younger girl was more healthy for breeding. So that was a very common thing that happened, and it wasn't seen as bad. Does that mean that that's how it should be? I don't know. Today, no, I guess. But back then, it was pragmatic. It made sense. So people look in the past at this story and go, oh, sounds like a pedo or something. It's kind of perverted. Is, you know, Hades is like an old man god compared to Persephone. What the fuck? There's the whole kidnapping thing. But that's version 1 of the story. Version 2 tells a story where Persephone was the child of a very domineering mother, a cold-ass queen winter bitch, Demeter, who was really protective and was really like wouldn't cut the apron strings. And so the story goes that Persephone was in on it. She wanted to be kidnapped. She wanted to be rescued from this overbearing mother. That's another version of it. There's a third version that it wasn't even Hades, that it was Zeus that did it. And there's so many different, there's dozens, I think there's 3 or 4 main versions of it. And the story of Hades and Persephone isn't really about the seasons, although it becomes about the seasons, yes. It's actually a story that is used in the mystery schools of the time through psychedelic rituals to undergo a literal kind of ego death and go into the underworld and become reborn. In other words, seeing the afterlife, seeing the true nature of the self, realizing the union with the divine, emerging on the other side of that, having an epiphany. So you'd go down so look at if you do a search on YouTube of the Eleusinian Mysteries, Elusian, I think it's how you spell it. Let's just look it up. You can find it. The Eleusinian Mysteries, and watch everything you can find on that. It's really, really startling because you realize what this mythology was really about. It didn't, as much as it sort of had to do with the seasons, that's like how our modern scholars look at things from a very, look at how much smarter we are position, right? It makes them look and feel superior, so they can look down their noses at antiquity and say they believed in silly shit. Look at how much smarter we are now. Another form of presentism, if you will. So when they would conduct the Eleusinian mysteries, they'd get you high off your ass by drinking the kikion, which is like a barley stew, but probably almost certainly had psychedelics in it. I think it'd be ridiculous to think it didn't. They get you all fucked up on it, and then they would go through and they would reenact the story of Hades and Persephone, and guess what character you play in the story? Because when you're going to watch this, you're not sitting up on a bunch of seats up in the top row watching all this. You're in the center of the whole stage. The whole play is being done around you, and you're the main character in the story. And that whole mythology surrounding the Eleusinian mysteries is one of the best. It's one of the reasons why I don't know how to pronounce it. I'll never pronounce it right. The chthonic mysteries. I love those things. I love it. I don't care about the Olympians. Give me the chthonic. Give me the Titans. Give me the primordials. I love those parts. The Olympians I don't care about them. To me, they're boring. That's right, Eddie. Where did the Masons and the Skull and Bones Society? Have you ever heard of what the George Bush and co. supposedly do? It's like they did their own version of that, but it was like a frat party version. Totally losing a lot of its oomph, I'm sure, along the way. Oh, get in this box with Geronimo's bones and fucking get high off your ass and see God. So Hector brought up, and some other people, so Me Too brought up Medusa. And that's another one that is through the eyes of presentism. And because we also, one thing we have to remember, we only have fragments of a lot of this stuff because, it's over 2,000 years old in a lot of cases. And the stuff that isn't that old or is retained, we're lucky to have, because a lot of it was intentionally destroyed by the rampage of the Christians and all this other shit. Not to blame it all on Christians, but you get my point. A lot of this stuff was destroyed by zealous people who didn't want those things to ever be known. And of course, just the ravages of time. So we only have a couple of versions of the story, and we weren't there. We don't live there now. We don't see that world. We don't know what that world was like. We don't know what the average person thought exactly, So like imagine 2,000 or 3,000 years from now, someone goes and watches the Thor movies, right? Or the Marvel movies. I'm willing to bet that if there's enough of a cataclysm between now and then where we lose a lot of records, I'm willing to bet that a lot of future historians will look back on this time and be like, those people still believed in gods? Wow. They still believed that Thor existed and was from, so their mythology updated and they believed that Thor was an alien? That's interesting. Right? Modern scholars look at antiquity through a lens of superiority and smugness that kind of ruins their ability to interpret it. They don't know what it was like to live back then. Now, were there people who believed in the myths as literal? I'm sure there were. There might even have been the majority. But the fact remains is that some people, and it was always the rulers of society, by the way, didn't believe in them that way. They were always used in a much more deeply spiritual way than, oh, they're gods that we have to sacrifice virgins to so that the sun comes up. That was the peasants' religion, if anybody's. The learned ones, the ones who ruled society, they weren't unspiritual at all. But they saw things through a much more sophisticated lens than we give them credit for. Just like we like to think people in antiquity had a flat earth or something. They knew the earth was round. I forget what year, but it was thousands of years ago. Okay. Wasn't even in question. The average person didn't know it because the average person wasn't educated, but the society knew. It was in there. It was in the records. They knew. So in the story of Medusa, there's a lot of versions. There's a version where, as Hector Lich points out, Athena is a monster who turned her priestess into a gorgon for no good reason. But of course, we don't know that because we weren't there, and we don't know how important those oaths were. So for example, Medusa made an oath to be a virgin because Athena is a virginal goddess. She is never supposed to be tainted by a man, so to speak. She's supposed to be young and pure, okay? And brilliant and powerful. Kicks Mars's ass, kicks Ares's ass because she's the tactician and Ares is just brute force. She's the elegant one. She wins the chess match and wins the war. She'll use Mars as her greater warrior, I suppose, but she plans and thinks, strategizes. So the priestesses of her temple, the guardians of her temple, were supposed to take vows of total chastity. Meaning they were supposed to die before giving up their virginity. Literally, that was their vow. So if she didn't take her own life rather than let Poseidon have her, or whoever it was she had sex with, that was seen as a violation of that honor. And so to the people of that ancient world, they would have heard that myth, known that that was part of the deal, and would have said, yeah, damn right, Athena, teach her a lesson by making her a Gorgon. Good for her. She betrayed her oath. Is she a bad guy now? Of course, looking back on it from presentism, the idea of making an oath where you don't have sex is some kind of horrible thing. It's unthinkable that you would make an oath that you'd kill yourself if you ever had sex. It's absurd to even say. I'm laughing about it to just say it. But back then it made sense, and it actually had pragmatic reasons for it. It was dangerous to have children in a world without medicine like we have today. Every mother took a risk. Every time you got someone pregnant, there was a roll of the dice, and there was a good chance they died. Very good chance. So there was a lot of reasons why remaining virginal was seen as a positive. It wasn't just because men wanted virgins and were perverts or something. It was a pragmatic thing. Not to say that that's what everybody wanted. I'm saying there was a pragmatic reason to think that sex and having children was dangerous and bad, you see, because there was a risk associated with it. Just like the way they thought salt was a purifying agent, like in a spiritual sense, because it could be used to preserve food and draw out impurities. So they said, well, salt must be sacred then. Then salt becomes one of the major offerings you can give. In fact, the Romans would pay their soldiers in salt. That's how valuable and important it was. The word salary literally means salt, basically. Did you know? Salt, salary. Hello. It's right there for you. And a lot of people don't know this stuff because you don't look at history. You look at these things and you go, oh, yeah, they were stupid or something. Or you look at these things and you end up believing in the literal interpretation of the mythology, not, not how it was or not how it should be seen. What's up, Behemoth X? I didn't notice you because I haven't been watching the chat. What's up, Behemoth X? Who did I miss? Stu's here. All right, what's up, Stu? Whew, I'm starting to look at the chat now again. What's that? Lamia's there too. Oh, what's up, Lamia? Yeah, I mean, speaking of Greek scary monsters, the Lamias, whatever you want to call them, they were pretty badass. Yeah. That's right. That's how they preserved meat, amongst other things. Salt was everything. So when we're looking at, when Fleshy asked the question, that was Fleshy for those who don't know. When Fleshy asked the question, are there myths that were misinterpreted? I'm going to say all of them are to some degree misinterpreted because a lot of people look at them today through presentism. This is, mostly the woke side of things does this, but Christians do it too. Hardcore fundies do it too. Anybody with a hard right-hand moralistic attitude looks at history and judges those people. We call it presentism. We use our current moralistic view to judge antiquity. If you want to judge antiquity and say, I would never do that now, that's fine. But if you judge antiquity and say those people were bad, like the founding fathers of America are bad because they still had slaves. Is slavery good? No. But society hadn't evolved to the point where you could just do that and give them up and take that stand. You didn't even know that it was wrong to that degree, probably. Some did, but you know what I'm saying? People hadn't quite realized why it was wrong. It wasn't really in the collective conscious for it to be seen as wrong. So nobody was going to do that. You think that there was a bunch of people walking around in that era going, man, these slave owners are real bad. We need to stop them. Nope. The slaves might be thinking it, but the average person, nope. Were they all bad because of it? Of course not. Again, doesn't mean it was okay. It just means that it was the standard of the time. It was the norm. So to say, oh, well, we have to like shit on the founding fathers. We have to shit on our pagan traditions. We have to shit on this and that because it was patriarchal or some other shit. That's ignorant. That's the epitome. So you're going to throw out all the wisdom of antiquity, all the good, all the things that were ever done in every culture just because they were patriarchal for a while or they had this or they had that. I fear for the world that is coming if that kind of thinking isn't stopped. I really do. You want progress, that's fine. But you don't get progress by cutting the root out from under you. You don't get progress towards the moon by destroying the root of your structure that's getting you there. Right? You can't run by cutting your feet off just because they're dirty. It's stupid. CJ, he says, haha, these primitive minds believe in gods. Quit trust the government. I love that. That's great. Make it a t-shirt. Make it happen. Sell it. I want 5% just because I say so. All right. It's a little bit slow tonight. I'm noticing not a lot of chit chat going on tonight. I noticed there's no Wyatt. Without Wyatt, there's like no questions. Somebody go wake Wyatt up. He must have like a test tomorrow or something.
Damien Draco's got a question for you.
Yeah, I'm reading that now. Okay, so Damien Draco asked, DH Thorne, you used to identify as a demon sorcerer and dark mystic, if I recall. Do you still identify with these labels? If not, what label? I definitely still use dark mystic. Demon sorcerer would have an A in it now, mainly because I'm tired of sort of, you know, doing the edgy thing on some degree. Don't get me wrong, I'm still doing the edgy thing. Come on, it's me we're talking about here. But I'm kind of tired of paying lip service to that type of thinking. But labels are just ways of introducing myself, so that people have something to work with. It's not like what I am, right? But I would definitely still use them both, just with the modification with the A, you know, a daemon sorcerer. I view them all as daemons now, because I've updated so much of my understanding over the last couple of years. I'm always a work in progress. People are like, Thorne, does that mean you were wrong in the past? I suppose. I've been wrong in the past. I'll be wrong now. Give me 10 years. I'll be looking back on my content now and going, damn, what an idiot. And if I'm not doing that, that means I'm fucked up, right? Nothing should be stagnant, not your enlightenment, nothing. If somebody tells you enlightenment's stagnant, they don't know what they're talking about. Enlightenment is not the end. It's the threshold. Figuring it out is the threshold. Getting that first taste of, oh shit, I'm God. That's not the end of the rainbow, guys. That's the start. You haven't even begun. Like, you think you live in some kind of vast world, then you open up this this doorway, and you realize that on the inside is much more than there was on the outside. And you're like, oh boy, what did I get myself into? So you need to be growing all the time. Not growing for growing's sake, but you need to be evolving. You should always be, you know, one of the things that is often misinterpreted, for example, is the concept of wu wei, not forcing things, going with the flow. And there's a saying that was hitting me over and over again recently, synchronistically. Everybody was saying it all of a sudden. And I don't know if it like happened in a movie and that's why, I don't know. But it's that old saying that dead things go with the flow, dead things go downstream. Now, there is a way to go with the flow that gets you to where you want to go, though. Okay? There's a way of not forcing things. There's a way to sail rather than row. You know, when a fish is going upstream towards the source, it doesn't do it by swimming sideways in the river. It aligns with the river and it goes with the flow towards the source. It doesn't go against the flow. It goes with it. Its whole body shape is designed to go with the flow of water, not against it, not to resist it. It's meant to slip right up that up the river thing. So going with the flow doesn't mean abandoning your existence, for example. Eddie, one must use lube and magic, so to speak. Not just magic, life itself. What's up, Regina? I haven't seen you in a while. How you doing, Regina? Good to see you. Very good to see you, Regina. Let's see. Stu asks, does baneful magic eventually risk its return to the adept to initiate it in all cases? Can of worms times, guys. That's a can of worms question. Let me think of a way to really approach this, because the reason why this is a can of worms is because I can't just say yes, no, or maybe. I really got to explain to you my understanding of all of this. What's up, Asariel Krabat? If all is divine, then nothing is forbidden. I am from the school of thought, based on experience that I've had, based on validated things that I have realized through practice, that all is divine. All is the same divine. If all is divine, nothing is forbidden. Nothing is bad, nothing is evil, nothing is wrong. Okay. There is no cosmic justice system that says you did the wrong thing, so therefore you got to pay for it. However, every action has a reaction. If you believe that magic causes things to happen, it's a valid belief. I don't fully ascribe to it the way others do. My understanding is magic reveals your will. Sometimes that takes the form of a miracle or magic type of effect, but I don't believe that your casting a spell on a candle causes anything to happen at all. So if anything, baneful magic reveals a baneful intention in the will of the divine. But what you put out has ripples. The thing is it's sort of a question of karma. People think karma is like a system of justice, right? They think if I do that, like instant karma is I push you and I get pushed back, right? Or I push you and then something happens to me. Karma means action, but it's a little simplistic to just think of it as that. Karma is any action that you take from an egoistic perspective. So long as there is a you in the equation, karma happens. It doesn't matter if you're doing something good or baneful. If I go out tomorrow and I encounter a homeless man on the street and he's begging for money, if I walk past him, did I do a good thing or a bad thing? Let's say I walk past him and I suddenly feel guilt, and I turn around because of that guilt and I put a $10 bill in his jar and I walk on. Did I do a good thing? Did I do a karmic thing? Which one of those two things was karmic? The walking past, or I felt something and gave him money? The karmic one was the one where I felt guilt and gave him money as a result. The one where I just walked on by without any care or concern at all whatsoever was not karmic. Was it deeply compassionate? No. But it doesn't have to be selflessly compassionate where you give your whole life away to help people. Why would you? That's a self-aggrandizing thought. It's thinking I'm going to be better than the other guy because I'm going to do the moral thing. So me feeling guilt and giving money to that person was a karmic act. Karma is always bad, by the way. Bad in the sense that it goes against your realization of your divinity. So if I go and I give him a $10 bill because I felt guilty, it wasn't about helping him. It was about feeling better about myself. That's karma. That's karma. Okay, so let's apply this to the baneful action. If you do a baneful action, what was your motivation for it? Why did you do that action? Is there a karmic reason for it, or something compassionate for it? If you have a pet dog and it gets rabies and you have to shoot it, and you do, versus you get a pet dog, it gets rabies and you don't shoot it because you'll feel bad for shooting it, which was the more compassionate act? Obviously, the more compassionate act is to put it down mercifully. So if you have magical influence and you apply that magical influence to use baneful magic to deal with a problem, a rabid dog will say in society, you use your magic to bring the Epsteins to account for what they've done. For example, with Epstein Island. For example, is that karmic? If so, it might only be a little drop. Depends on your motivation. So when would it come back to you? Well, if you're throwing out something because of your own imbalanced energies and you hate and you're angry, and there's nothing wrong with hate, but hate's got to be transmuted. It's got to be used. Hate is a healthy, important emotion. Just like, I agree almost 100% with Anton LaVey on that one. But hate that is misused or turned inward or allowed to fester, that's not okay. Hate's got to be, it's got to be used. It's got to be turned into, it's got to be transmuted, or else it destroys you. It's very healthy to hate, but that hate has to be followed with something. Hopefully a positive action, but it's got to be followed by an action. Self-help or something. So if you go out there and you're casting, hateful, hurtful spells, and you're doing it because you want to get somewhere, and you think that by being baneful to your boss will die and you'll get his job or something, that's a way to do things. But you are actually paying a price for it. It's just not the price that people consider. People are dumb, and they think that when we say you pay a price for doing these things, that price is judgment, or that price is, the law of return and something bad happens to you. No, the price that you pay for doing that is you lose sight of your own divinity in the process, because you don't realize that character you just hit with a curse is you in another form. And if you're hitting someone like that in a non-compassionate way, ultimately you're hurting yourself, but you're also hurting your chances of realizing your divinity. Now, the irony, the great irony of all ironies is it's always the divine doing all this. This is why I say it's all divine, therefore nothing is forbidden. It's not that you're not supposed to do that or that you can't do it or that it's wrong to do it. It's just that the consequence is still a consequence. Is it wrong for me to do that? Was that wrong? It hurt a little bit. Was it wrong? No. There was nothing wrong about it. Would I prefer not to do it again? Yes. The consequence of that is not that it's wrong and should not be done. It is that I felt a little discomfort doing it. So there's always, you know, a reaction to everything the divine does with itself. That's undeniable. Now, I've got a secret for you. All of the best baneful magic, no matter how good you are at it, it always works, like all magic does, by balancing out tensions. Revealing the truth by balancing out tensions, by revealing the divine will by balancing the equation. So let me give you an example. If I am going to curse somebody that I don't like, and that person that I don't like is a highly evolved, balanced individual, then the chances of that curse doing much to them are very low. That's assuming magic has a cause and effect influence again. So if we're operating under that wavelength, that I do a ritual and it causes something to happen, you've got to realize that if you go after someone who's really balanced, you know, evolved spiritually, chances are it's not going to do shit. Because they probably don't have a lot of energetic imbalances in their life. They're probably not pissing a lot of people off. And even if they are, they're not doing it in a way where it's really them. It's their own shadow bothering them. They don't have like a lot of bad relationships with people. They take care of their health. It's probably not going to be an easy target. On the other hand, you get someone that you're banefully attacking and they are, I don't know, abusive to somebody, right? They abuse their children or something. Well, if you curse that person, there's a very, very big imbalance there. What the curse does is it sort of takes that stretched rubber band and it lets it go. It cuts that rubber band so it snaps. And the more stretched that rubber band is, the more impact it's going to have. This is why it's easier to curse somebody who's already a fuck up, just so you know. There's a couple people like that in the occult community online. Some of them apparently have disappeared. I haven't heard from them in a while. At least they don't talk about me as much as they used to, I suppose. You curse those people. You know, maybe they OD on their meth habit. Maybe they, maybe they finally pick a fight with the wrong person, or, you know, something like that. This is one of the reasons why I like using shadows for all baneful work, because shadows are ultimately the target's own shadow that they have to deal with. This means that there is a two-pronged effect. Effect one, shit happens to them. But effect two is, if they integrate that shadow, the shit stops. So one way or the other, my problem is solved, because usually the reason that we don't like someone is because they're not integrating a shadow, and that shadow's coming out as a negative, toxic behavior. Usually. Not always. Some shadows are positive shadows. People don't realize, like, I might have to do a book on positive shadows. They do exist. You know, you can have a positive shadow. You don't realize why you're doing positive things for people. You know? Like, why do I... why am I fat, right? Oh, well, because I was taught by my grandma that there's starving children in Africa, and so I always finish my dessert or something, right? I feel bad for those people, so it's like a shadow, like where I'm trying to do, or why do I always, why do I always open the door for people or something. Like that's that, you know, I'm joking here. I'm kind of exaggerating a theme, but you get the point. But yeah, if somebody has got a very negative shadow, then by sending that shadow at them, they've got two choices: integrate that fucker or be devoured by it. You send the right shadow at somebody, if they can integrate it, they'll start not doing the things that are making you want to curse them so much. You send, and if they are unable to do that, then that shadow eats them. What form that takes, I don't know. Depends on the shadow, depends on the situation. Integration of shadows, please elaborate. That's a lifelong study and practice. Integration of shadows would be step one: recognize that they exist. Recognize that there are parts of your psyche that you don't look at. What are your, I would suggest you look up Carl Jung and his subject of the shadow and start from there. Okay. It's a big subject, and it's probably the most important part of any sort of magic that is sincerely about, you know, ascension or self-integration or any of that shit. Doing shadow work is the most important thing. And it's the most underdone thing. Like, people who, if you don't do it on purpose, you're going to do it anyway. It's going to happen anyway. You might as well be involved on purpose. If you let it happen by its own natural course, it's going to hurt a lot worse. If you take the bull by the horns and do shadow work yourself, you do the work, you investigate, you ask questions about why I did this, and you follow through, you can actually get through that process at warp speed and avoid some of the worst pitfalls. But if you wait for those shadows to integrate themselves, you're in for a really bumpy ride. So the first thing is to admit that there are shadows in your life. Like AA. Every single mortal being ever has a shadow. Even the integrated ones are still a shadow. Okay, there's still shadow there. As soon as you integrate one, a new one pops up. They're just part of human behavior. Okay. But a shadow is, so you have to admit they exist. And I don't mean that in like a theistic way. I mean, you have to admit that there's parts about yourself that you deny, that you won't look at, that you resent. And you may even be aware of them, but you don't allow them to be acknowledged. So, for example, something you're ashamed of about yourself, right? Oh, I'm ashamed of the way, I don't know, think of something petty. You know, I'm ashamed of the mole on my left ass cheek. So that's why I never wear shorts, right? You know, something like that. So you might be aware of your shame, but you're ashamed of it. So you push it back down inside you and you don't let it out. That's another kind of shadow. So shadows are either things you're not aware of or the things that you're aware of, but that you tuck away and you intentionally keep not just secret, but secret from yourself. You don't admit them to yourself if possible. Like, oh, no, it's not that I'm bad at, at my job. It's just that everybody else sucks. Yeah, that's what it is. Right? You know you suck at your job, but you're blaming it on everybody else, right? So that's step two, admitting that you've got specific shadows. And so that's that. Next step is to identify them. I created Shadownomicon partially for that purpose, because you can do this by creating or evoking or recognizing the egregoric shadow as a shadow person. You can either manifest it, you can create it, you can pull it out, or you can realize it that it's already there. However you do it, you can come to terms with it and you can externalize those shadows in archetypal form. And you can interact with that shadow archetype face-to-face in ritual and then integrate it. So what does that mean? Well, we're getting to that. So you have to cast a light on them. You've got to reveal them. You've got to manifest them. You can use the Clipbot through this. You can use Shadownomicon for this. You can use just plain old psychology. Works just fine. Doesn't have to be anything spiritual or weird. You don't have to turn them into ghosts or demons. A lot of people can, and they do, They don't even mean to do it. They just do. Once you have revealed them, you've brought them into the light, integrating them is more of an art form than a science. The reason it's an art form is because every shadow is a little different, and every shadow has a different thing about it that it's trying to do. You know, maybe the reason why you don't like to answer the phone is because when you were a kid, you had a bad experience with someone on the phone. And, you know, it's like when you see in psychology movies where they're like, here's the reason why you're scared of flying. It's because when you were a little kid, you know, your dad's airplane crashed and, you know, like something like that. So integrating your shadow is often about finding out what your shadow is and finding a way to either forgive, have compassion for, or finding an outlet for that shadow that's productive. Hate is a kind of shadow for a lot of people. A lot of people, it becomes the colossal shadow in Shadownomicon. When you have unresolved hate that you tuck down inside of you, that you don't act on, you don't do anything with, that becomes the colossal shadow. And eventually, the reason it's a colossal shadow is because eventually that fucker is going to blow up and turn to violence or self-destruction or something really intense. So like when you see somebody's got a bad temper, that usually means that the thing that they snapped about wasn't what they snapped about. When you encounter someone where they're like on pins and needles and you're walking on eggshells and they're ready to yell at any minute, the reason that they're mad isn't because you forgot to take the garbage out. That's just the final straw, the pop. That's just the needle that popped the balloon. They are mad because they've been building up anger in themselves because of negative self-talk, anxiety, whatever, and they're not dealing with that. That shadow gets bigger and stronger and stronger and bigger until eventually you do the wrong thing and the colossal shadow comes out and just crushes you. That's all metaphorical, but it's also literal. It really depends on how you look at things. So how do you deal with that, right? It's an art form. Every single shadow is a little different. And the way to resolve it and integrate it's a little different. You may have to find a creative outlet for that shadow. Hopefully one that is legal and pragmatically moral and all of this stuff. So for example, in Shadownomicon, there's Tall Man who's like a pervert, right? And everything up to and including like, you know, CP stuff, right? You know, stuff we don't want to talk about. That kind of stuff. How does someone who's got that, how do they deal with it? How does someone who finds, you know, kids a little whatever, how do they keep that from turning into action? So how do you integrate that shadow? I don't got a real answer for you on that one. But you got to find a way. And there is no, like, I'm not a psychologist. I can't really instruct on that. I'm sure there's people out there who could. But you could try by personifying that shadow into a shadow person and engaging with it. It's one way to do it. Thank you, Behemoth X. That does help me actually, because I know that they're screwing me over, brother. Behemoth says he gets no notifications when I go live anymore. Usually in the corner of his monitor, it tells him who's going live and then that he's subscribed to me. Doesn't even say I'm going live. Just put, I know. I mean, to be fair, I don't put, a lot of the times I don't create the stream till I'm ready to do it, but that shouldn't matter that much. Like I've never noticed a huge difference between when I advertise a stream a week in advance versus when I do them on the fly. The only time that makes a difference is if I have a special guest. So if I know I'm going to have EA on, or if Behemoth, you ever want to come on, I know that if I'm going to have you on, I better advertise that like a few days at least before you come on. That'll maximize my views. But if it's just a normal, regular, every Thursday stream, I've never noticed a difference if I post it a day, 3 days, or 5 minutes in advance. Never makes a difference. People either come or they don't. And it really doesn't seem to matter. I know that YouTube is algorithmically throttling me. I know that they're not giving as many impressions for my channel as they used to. I say too many of the things that they don't like. And until the laws change and the rules change so that they can't suppress political opinions and opinions on current events that are not in line with what they believe, I'm going to get demoted because I've been silent too long, I suppose. Sure, I could have just stayed silent this whole time, but my shadow is to speak. My shadow is not to be silent. Is it a good shadow? Well, it's a bad shadow if it's toxic. If I'm okay with the repercussions of doing this speech, then it's not a shadow anymore. That's how I integrate that shadow. All right, Apprentice, Necromancer, Hades, Black Flame. What's up, brother? I recognize you, man. How you doing? Okay, hello. How do you do shadow work correctly without every single suppressed emotion that you push aside from the fear of feeling trauma from the past coming all at once? Like, ooh, yeah, that's tough, dude. All right. Maybe instead of asking how to prevent it, maybe the better question or the better solution is to try to roll with it. Try to find a way that you can roll with that, let it happen. The reason it's a shadow is because you're afraid of that emotion, I guess. You know, it could be. It's like I said before with the hate and all that stuff. You got to find an outlet that's not toxic, right? So if this trauma you're talking about is really bad and there's a lot of emotional pain with it, you know, I don't know, use your imagination, guys. What could it be? You know, I lost a loved one or I was touched as a kid or something, right? How do you deal with that without it causing pain just to even touch it, right? You know, our bodies are wild. When there's something infectious in it, we'll enclose it with more of our body and fucking entomb it in an abscess and tuck it away until it's broken down and dissolved. And then it'll either get expelled like as an open sore and bleed all over, or it'll just become absorbed and just stays as this knot of putrescence in our body forever. And a shadow is a little bit like an abscess in that case. And if to pop that infection and drain that thing, it can stink. Like if you ever had like an infected like tooth or something, you ever get like, I had my gums lanced once because I had a bad cavity and it just rotted all the way up and I got an abscess. And when he lanced that fucker, not only did it hurt, but it stank. Like it's all rotten in there. It's not good. So when you go down and you delve down into the abyss and you find that shadow that you have been not dealing with, it's like an abscess. It's going to suck. You're going to hate it. You're going to look at it like, fuck you. You're going to be adversarial to it. So the only answer is to have compassion towards it instead. You've got to see that shadow as you, but that part of you that you're not acknowledging. You've got to find a way to embrace it, even that discomfort, even that hurricane of emotion. If you have to, get a friend to help you, get someone to be with you, someone who you can trust, who can hold you when you cry. Someone, now, the ultimate secret secret to integrating shadows is sincerity and honesty and compassion. Those three things, it's all really one thing, really. Compassion is sincerity, sincerity is compassion, and they're both honesty. You cannot be compassionate unless you're sincere about it. And you can't be sincere unless you're compassionate. So in order to integrate your shadow, there needs to be sincerity. You don't have to tell the world, but you got to be honest with yourself. You must be sincere and compassionate towards yourself, or else it will not happen. And if you can find someone in your life who can do that with you, who has sincerity and compassion for you, who you can be sincere with, this is the point of a confessor. We can make fun of Christians all day long and have a lot of good points against them, but at the same time, not everything they do is bad. Not everything they do is wrong or unhelpful. That's the whole point of a confessor. Confessor is supposed to be a person who doesn't know necessarily who you are, who you can talk to and will absolve you. Well, we're not looking to be absolved by some right-hand tradition. What we're looking for is someone that can hold us when we cry. Now, some of us don't need that. Some of us can create an egregore and hug that fucker instead. Some of us can pull our shadows out and treat those shadows as literal beings, talk to them, walk with them, and cry with them. And that's just as cathartic as you need. Everybody's different. You know, there's shadow current ways for shadow current people, and there's Jungian ways for Jungian people, and there's Qliphoth ways for Qliphoth people, and there's, you know, Zen ways for other people. So my advice is to not try to stop it, and not even to control. Well, you got to control it. You don't want to hurt yourself or somebody else, of course. But I don't mean, you don't want to control it so it doesn't happen. You want to find an outlet for it so that whatever it does doesn't destroy you with it. And that I have no specific answer for. That's, you got to find that on your own. It sounds very simplistic, but it's honest. It's really what you have to do. You know, how do I integrate my shadows? That's what I do. I find an outlet for them. Sometimes I don't right away. Sometimes it takes a while, right? The ultimate form of integration is acceptance. You accept this thing about you. I accept that I get fat easily and I have to live a life on keto for the most part, or else I stay fat. I went off keto for a little while. I gained back 20 pounds. Not enough to hurt me or anything, but enough to go, oh shit. It didn't take much at all. I just went to low carb and I gained weight. Now, is that a shadow? Well, it is a shadow because it influences a lot about my behavior. It makes me look in the mirror different. It makes me feel bad about myself. It makes me feel ways. It doesn't make me feel, but you know what I'm saying. It leads to a feeling. So the fact that my body wants to be fat becomes a shadow in my life. If I attack that person, that fat person, like I do, my wife will tell me, and she'll tell you, you know, I am harsh on fat people, none more so than myself. I make fun of my fat ass more than I have to, trust me. But I kind of have to. Sometimes I got to get hard with myself. I've got to say, enough's enough, you're fat, stop it. But I do have compassion for it, don't get me wrong. Sometimes compassion requires a slap. Sometimes compassion requires something cruel. That's the irony, is compassion isn't always nice. Compassion isn't always love and light. Compassion sometimes is a baneful curse that destroys. Sometimes compassion is saying something harsh, but you need to hear it. When I say to myself, you're a fat fuck in the mirror, I'm not saying that to bring myself down. I'm saying that to be like, hello, stop ignoring this. Stop putting it off, because your other shadow is to be quite, quite the procrastinator. Do something before it's too late. Hey, dummy. Hey, fatso. Do something. Right? So it sounds cruel as shit, but there's actually compassion there. I'm doing that to get myself to motivate. Doesn't always work. Sometimes I got to be nice about it. Sometimes I got to be like, listen, relax. It's going to work. You're going to do keto and you're going to get skinny again. It's fine. Okay. Now that I've got a working tool, I can do that. I can relax a little. And of course you relax and that makes it better. But sometimes you got to be cruel, right? All right, let me scroll down. I've seen a lot of people commenting and I missed. Thing jumped. Katie says, sounds like an awesome idea. Make a clone of your shadow self, almost like a thought form of programming. That's one way of doing it. If you don't mind, you can purchase my book Shadownomicon or watch my videos on the subject of the shadow or Shadownomicon. There's a lot of free content around it too. I'm not just trying to sell you something, but if you want to purchase my book Shadownomicon, that has some stuff in it that's very useful. It approaches it from the perspective of the shadow people, which is part of an urban myth and legend, but they are connected. It's basically the same thing. Read the book, you'll understand. And it's quite a potent book. A lot of people have used it and really got a lot out of it. For some people, it's not that helpful, to be brutally honest. Some people look at it and they go, okay, it's got a good story in it, about your life. It's all true, it's one of those things that hopefully that anecdotal life story can help you relate, I suppose. It's got a good ritual setup in it, one that's become my main ritual setup for any spirit working. Something like it anyway. And it's just a decent I know no one wrote it, so of course I'm going to say it's decent. It's a decent all-around grimoire. Most people would agree. So check out the link in the description if you want to check it out. If not, just invent your own way, dude. Like, for real. You can find a way, but there's a reason why that I wrote it the way I did, full of dark warnings and things. There's a reason it's done that way. It really helps if you approach your shadow as a scary monster. The reason why it's useful to do that is so that you give it the respect it deserves as something that you're scared of. If you approach your shadow like it's this sweetheart that means no harm, then you don't take it as seriously. If you approach your shadow as a monster, you take that shit serious as a heart attack, and guess what? You tend to integrate it a lot better for that reason. When people are like, Thorne, you talk about things, and in this book you say, like, you treat them as demons and stuff. Well, yeah, there's a reason for that. It's not just because they're scary demons or something. It's if you don't treat them that way, they lose a lot of their potential to help you. They just do. Eddie says, shadows are spiritual cis and I'm Dr. Pimple Popper. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So Apprentice Necromancer says, I believe I know the perfect person to help with this. That's really cool. I'm glad to hear it. I never thought of it like that. I've been doing it. I think I'm reading you wrong. I've been doing it work this whole time. No wonder my shadow self is so if you fight your shadow, it's going to fight back. You've got to approach that shadow as something, as yourself. You just have to. You literally have to. I spent my whole young life fighting shadows, trying to banish them and destroy them and push them out of my life, only for them to come back with a vengeance 10,000 times stronger than I was able to deal with. The only way you beat a shadow is to integrate it back into you. Is to love it, acknowledge it, know it is you, turn it into a strength. Anybody who's good at reading people knows that Ranzael, being more than just a shadow person, is the shadow archetype that is the most me. And by integrating that shadow, I took all of that negative shit that Ranzael represented, transmuted it into positive activities, taking his manipulative, Machiavellian, vindictive, just wickedness, and turning that into an ability to be charming and charismatic, okay? And to not just read people to make use of them, to manipulate them, but to read them so that I could help in a synergistic kind of way. So it wasn't just me feeding off of them. If I hadn't integrated that bastard, if I hadn't fallen in love with that and said, wow, he's like a cool bad guy, right? And approached it that way. If I didn't do it that way, I could never have integrated it and become healed and actually learn to have genuine compassion rather than seeing things as targets to be destroyed or devoured for myself. Yeah, Dr. Pimple Popper is pretty badass. I watch that, but I got to make sure I don't watch it when my wife can see the screen because she'll throw up. So, okay, so Eddie brings up demons. So shadow people, or the shadow, the demons or devils, not daemons, but demons and devils of, medieval Christian or other cultures. Those are just shadows, guys. They're shadows personified as monsters. And they're monsters that are relevant to their culture. You know, what is Lilith if not a shadow of lust and infidelity and all this other stuff, okay? In the Christian mind, I'm saying. In our mind, we've integrated that bastard. So Lilith is a dark mother who has compassion for us, and we see her as a positive, not a negative. We've integrated that fucker, and it's no longer that anymore. We're no longer, prudes that are afraid of people who have different sexual interests than us. So we don't see that character as bad. It's like if Christians in medieval times had a demon about homosexuals or something. Like, there's a demon of homosexuality. And, well, we wouldn't see that as a demon these days, most of us. We'd be like, well, that's funny for it to be. That's like a funny thing to be a demon. Me. Getting tired here. I don't know why I'm tired. I haven't been up that late. All right, how long have we been going for? All right, good. We're good. Just remember, your shadow will be integrated one way or the other. It's either going to be integrated because it just does what it wants through you, or because you integrate it and you channel it. You got to sort of pick one. Ajna says, I like how DH always insults demons and deities when he mentions them. I mean, I guess. You know what it is that I'm irreverent. I think theism is dumb. Like when people subordinate themselves, make themselves subordinate to deities, that's stupid. Like I guess I'm just that edgy Luciferian guy who looks at all deities like, even if you're bigger than me, fuck you. I had a saying when I was younger, like when people be like, aren't you afraid God's going to be mad at you? And I would turn to them and be like, look, if God exists the way you say he does, and he's mad because I don't use the right name or I don't read the right Bible and therefore I'm going to hell, then I look forward to spitting in his face before he throws me in the pit. I look forward to giving him the middle finger. I want him to examine that. Look at it, bitch, before you push me down into the pit. Because if that's the kind of deity you are, you're not. I don't want to be there. I don't want that as my deity. My deity won't judge you because you made a mistake. And my deity won't even judge you because you willfully made a mistake. My deity will try to teach you. My deity will not eternal judgment because you made a mistake. Fuck that. Fuck your God. Fuck all your gods. Fuck Zeus. Fuck Lucifer. Fuck them all. Don't care. Not impressed. As masks of the divine, they are a shit stick just like the Buddha, motherfuckers. Those of you who understand Zen, understand what I just said. All the deities, all the Buddhas are a fucking shit stick. That's all they are. Don't you dare worship them as if they're better than you. They're all you, just in disguise. Hell Daddy's gonna be mad you insulted wifey. Come at me, bro. And if I die in a fire, it was probably not that. One of the things that can happen, Apprentice, I'm going to shorten you to Apprentice, hope you don't mind. That's a long, I'll call you Hades Black Flame. How's that? One of the things that happens, Hades, is the further you push your shadow down, the more it separates and almost in a schizophrenic manner becomes like an alternate personality or a split. Yes, 100% true. I don't know if that's true from a psychological perspective, but from a spiritual perspective, that's true. That is exactly what happens. And you got to get on a path of integration. Some people do find it funny when I insult the gods. Oh, Thorne's going to pay for it. Good. Fuck them. If they're that petty that they can't take a little insult, fuck them. I pay my dues. I put the incense on the altar occasionally. I get to talk some shit. I'm irreverent, you know, and joyously so. I don't mean it to be cruel or hateful or even resentful. That's not the energy behind it. It's any deity that demands my worship gets nothing but my ire. They're a false deity. RP said they had to leave the channel for a bit for personal purposes. I'm not sure what that is. Hopefully it was nothing bad. Hopefully you're okay, or hopefully I didn't do something, but welcome back. He says, but upon my return tonight, I see Thorne is still in rare form. Yeah, I suppose. I'm still ranting and telling the gods to go fuck themselves. I made Malice smile, apparently. Any deity that demands your worship is not deserving of it. Any deity. Any deity that will punish you because you dared to say something insulting towards them. No. Just no. Hey, that's one way to look at it, Ajna. Insults may be worship to a dark deity. I think they'd be happy anyway. Look, there is something to that. In fact, you can get familiars that want to be punished instead of rewarded. Like you can actually manifest or engineer a familiar for yourself that thrives off of negative attention rather than positive. Yeah, RP, I understand tech breaks, dude, especially with everything going on lately. I don't blame you. I really don't. Oh, I get it. No malice. I get it. All right. So I'll call you No Malice. I hope I remember that. That's pretty clever that you struck it through like that. No malice. I like that. No malice. All right. I like that. That's cool, bro. We call those subs. Is that what they are? Does that mean I'm a dom? I don't know. I feel like I'm a switch if I'm anything. If I'm anything, I'm a switch. When I'm a dom, I'm a damn good dom. When I'm a sub, I'm a damn good sub. So that's what I'm going to say. My wife's saying, damn straight. Jay Sauber, what's up, brother? It's been a little minute. Good to see you, man. Thank you. Thank you for that donation, brother. I appreciate it. Thank you so much, man. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're doing well. Stu asks, so our shadow self is usually made up of our worst aspects, the unbalanced errors, or of our intended personality, like character defects. In plain speak, yes, but in true speak, no. What do I mean by that? Well, I say in plain speak, yes, because to you, in your mind, it's a negative. It's a bad thing. But in the truth, it's not bad. There is no bad. There is no evil. There is no worse or better. You are you, my friend. And those shadows are you. If you treat them as they're bad, they get pushed into the abyss. If you embrace them as part of your true nature, you can learn to integrate them. So think of it like taking a shit, okay? Taking a shit's gross. So, but taking a shit is totally acceptable if you do it in the toilet, right? But if you take a shit in the middle of the living room, it sucks. A shadow's a lot like that. It's not really bad. It's just bad if you don't properly process and integrate it. Very often, we associate them with our most toxic traits because they usually manifest as a toxic behavior in your life. So, like Ronzael is a shadow of wickedness. It's the shadow of Machiavellian manipulation and control, right? It's sort of like the leader of the regular shadows for a reason. It's manipulates, it's controlling, it's vindictive, vengeful. Well, what are all of those things? Those are toxic traits of something else. What would that be, though? What are the reasons someone might do those things? Why might you become manipulative? Why might you be vindictive and vengeful? The shadow is the symptoms. You've got to get to the core of why the shadow is those symptoms. Why is Ranzael vindictive? Why is Ranzael controlling? Manipulative? Why? Well, a lot of the time, that's due to an insecurity, isn't it? Ranzael, despite appearances externally as powerful and dangerous, is really a representative of an insecurity. Now, they're all a form of insecurity, but it's a very specific kind of insecurity. It's the insecurity that comes from having, been harmed and hurt and lost control. As Stu said, revenge, payback, unresolved issues. Yes, quite right. Being someone who was, taught they were worthless. All of that. Good, Apprentice. I'm really glad to hear that, brother. If you can find a way, like I said, I'm not trying to sell you. I mean, I appreciate it if you do. I'm not trying to sell you on it, but my book Shadow Nomicon is one way to go for it. Do I have a copy over here I can show you? I usually keep one around. Hey, honey, do you have one over there? I haven't done it. Forgive me, guys. I haven't done a sales pitch in like a year. I think my wife's gonna. I have them all in my ritual room. I don't feel like getting up. She's already halfway there. I don't know if you'll find it. It's on the bookshelf in there. I got a whole video on it, though. You can check it out. It's kind of funny we're talking so much about shadows because that's the theme of my talk in New Jersey. I don't know, Hades, if you're anywhere near Newark on the 30th, but I'm doing a meetup there in Newark at a club. So, okay, here we go. Here's the not for resale copy. So this is the book. I don't know if you can see it good, but it's about mid-length. I think it was like 60 or 80,000 words. And this is just, my artistic rendering of this concept through magic, through experiences. I love the ritual I put in there because that ritual has become my main way of doing it for all spirits, not just shadows. Here's some of the artwork from the book. That's Legion, which is the collective shadow. So really it's about shadow people and shadow work. Okay. They're deeply linked subjects, believe it or not. One of the things about, like, when I encounter paranormal investigators and they talk about seeing shadow people, not every shadow person is this kind of a shadow people, to be clear. Lots of spirits can show up and look like a shadow. Lots of them. Okay. I've never personally worked with Erebus, but I've heard of people who do, and Erebus shows up with shadows. Supposedly Saturn shows up, Saturn or Kronos shows up with shadows. Shadows are not unique to anything. Okay, shadows are a common form spirits can take. It's all from Amazon, dude. I'm self-published through Amazon. They get a little piece of it, but I have it priced so that I get at least half of that. So, they take a pretty decent chunk, but I made sure I priced them so that I make at least enough profit to make it worth my while. So if that's your concern, brother, just go right ahead and go on Amazon for it. Go for Kindle or the paperback. They're both there. So whichever one you like. I got 3 books. So if you're interested in them. But if not, I got a lot of free stuff on this channel. So check that all out first. I'm not trying to push you into it. I appreciate it if you do. But a lot of those shadow, so in the 90s when I first started encountering shadow people, this is before art bells, before all of that shit. We encountered them and we started putting two and two together, and especially I did, what they were. And as I integrated that, they stopped showing up as much. When I hear paranormal investigators talking about, oh, I saw shadow people, I often wonder, you know, like, I wish I was there, because I would start asking questions about, you know, is there abuse in the home? Is there, you know, like parents abusing children? Is there someone with anger issues, right? I'd start investigating, not like the history of the house necessarily. I'd be asking about the current occupants. What's their deal? Do they have unintegrated shadows? And is there someone in that house who has made an egregore out of that, and now it's manifesting as a shadow person? Unwittingly, not on purpose, just unwittingly. Like Eddie said, shadow people are modern day demons. That's how I approach them. And it's done me a lot of good. Stu Henry asks, within witchcraft, should shadow work be only tackled with demonic spirits? I've never approached angelic entities, but can they address... So literally anyone can address shadow beings. Anyone can attempt it. The issue is you don't want to approach them in an adversarial way. You have to approach them from the perspective of integrating them. So if you are going for like Archangel Michael to cast them out and destroy them, you will have success at first, and then that fucker will be back with a vengeance when Michael's not looking, okay? In fact, when I was younger doing a lot of this stuff, when these entities showed up, other spirits fucking ran away. Because for a human mortal being, there is no entity more powerful or dangerous to you than your shadow. Period. I have said this, and I get chills when I say it. Legion and all of the shadow people that I've described, those are just my egregoric masks for them. You've got to find what that means for you. But those entities are, for the human condition, as far as we know it, there is no demon, no deity, nothing that compares to them. They are orders of magnitude more powerful than any god. And I don't say that like, oh, look, I invented this. People who sincerely do shadow work know I'm right. Because if you don't integrate those shadows, no deity can help you. They're all inferior to that. Shadow work is probably the most important thing people overlook in their practices. So many people do magic and they're going, I'm going to heal this and I'm going to gain that and blah, blah. And they never examine their shadow ever. And that shadow rules them and devours them. It's like trying to banish a shadow is like trying to shout silence into existence. It's like shouting shut up in a cave to make the echoes stop. It doesn't work. All you're doing is making it worse. These shadow beings, especially when empowered as egregores, I'm just saying that's why they're worthy of your respect, not fear respect, but literal respect. You must respect them as really being powerful. literally unstoppable. They have you by the throat. You cannot stop them. They are you. It's like a schizophrenic axe murderer, you know, a suicidal axe murderer in a cell in a prison. How do you stop them? Right? You know? Just watch out, though. The way that Shadownomicon is designed, it is not for beginners. So if you're on the beginner spectrum, I recommend you get a book on the Qliphoth instead, because the danger of Shadownomicon is you are literally feeding your shadow in a structured way to egregorize it using the archetypal patterns I give you. Now, those archetypal patterns, those archetypes exist in the collective conscious, in the divine, okay? So the masks I show you are mine. You may design your own masks. You may find your own shadows, okay, that aren't in the grouping that I gave you. But that is a template. Everything I gave you is a template. But when you're starting out, it's designed to be done by the book. Usually I tell you to go and do things in a way that feels right and go ahead and break the rules here and there if you understand the rules and why you're doing it. In this case, you are intended to do this exactly as written. Exactly. Treat it like if you get one ingredient wrong, something will blow up. Once you've established contact, legitimate, you know you've contacted it and you have no doubt, then you can start to work with it and do it your own way, but under the guidance with them. Just understand, this is a heavy measure of relinquishing, you know, your egoistic desire to control them. You're literally saying, I'm going to do it this way, but what do you recommend to them? And these are beings that can destroy you, literally. They are you. And one of their goals through integration is, in a sense, destruction, just not necessarily toxic destruction. It's kind of like that rubber band analogy. They're a stretched rubber band. You can either let them go like this, or you can let one end go and fucking hurt yourself. Or let both ends go. I suppose letting both go would be cool too. So you just understand, Shadownomicon is not, anybody can read it and get something out of it, but do not attempt to practice it. Not because the rituals are hard. They're actually really simple. Do not attempt to practice this directly or open this door, because once you do and you start manifesting your shadow in an egregoric way, you are lighting it. It's like lighting a zombie on fire, right? It doesn't kill the zombie. It just, now you got flaming zombies. You're creating flaming zombies out of regular zombies. If you're not ready to deal both psychologically and magically with what they can do, don't open the door. Just it's better to do it and talk to them through the door instead. Use the Qliphoth. Use something a little bit more structured in the balanced way. This is, you know, this is edgy by the seat of your pants, throw caution to the wind style. This is, I don't know how else to put it. You know, people on the non-hardcore left-hand path have heard of this and have really gotten mad at me for creating it, or for using it, for that matter. You know, a couple of years ago, I did the Shadowgate project. That was in 2020, excuse me. And me and a group of people did the Shadowgate project. We opened up several major Shadowgates in the world, and the world has not been the same since. We didn't change the world, but we exposed the world to its shadow. And everything that's going on, I see it transpiring now. The world is waking up to things. The world is waking up to things that it could not admit in 2019. In 2.5 short years, 3 years, the world is finally starting to recognize what's going on. That how much we've been deceived, how much the media has lied to us, how much our leaders are corrupt. People are starting to finally see it. I didn't change the world. Me and my group didn't change the world, but we did empower the shadows to become visible. We didn't know if it meant we'd be seeing shadow egregores everywhere or if people would start to have to face facts. Well, looks like we got the second half more. So, hurrah, but people were pissed off. They're like, humanity's not ready to face its shadow. You're going to kill us all. I had a lot of haters for a minute. And, all right. Some of them blame me for the events of, some of them do. There's a couple of forums out there where people apparently, I don't know if they still talk about, for a little while though, they were talking about me like I caused the Armageddon of 2020 with COVID and everything else. You know, laughable, but that's what they think. But Shadownomicon is that kind of dangerous. There's no question. It's dangerous because you're dangerous. There's nothing more dangerous than you. I saw that, No Malice. I saw you delete that comment. There's nothing more dangerous than your own shadow. Nothing. And there's also nothing to fear from it at the same time. Ironically enough, if you integrate it, there's nothing to fear from it. It can be your greatest ally or your greatest enemy. I feel like that was a good spot to end. Like I should be like, until next week, ladies and gentlemen, this is D.H. Thorne, Mind the Shadows. All right. I think I got time for one more decent question. Does anybody have a decent question, or does anybody care to have a decent question? You know, anything you want me to address? I'll give you a few minutes. Otherwise, I'm going to do the roundup here. I would like to mention, guys, by the way, I know times are tough, money's tight, and all the rest, so no pressure. But Camilla's Etsy store has a lot of mirrors left. There's only been a couple of sales, so things have definitely slowed down. I don't know if the mirrors have just saturated the market or if it's like, you know, people just can't afford them. But I really recommend check out the wife's Etsy store if you want some of those things. There's still plenty left. There's now sigil things there for using them with sigils. So check out our Etsy store, please, if you don't mind, and give her a little bit of love. And if you like something, you know, pick it up. She's got stuff in all different price ranges. So, and of course, buy my books and go to my Patreon and kiss my ass. Give me your support and love, guys. And if you can't afford any of that stuff, dude, by all means, just like, share, and subscribe. That's more than enough. That's all I ask, is to do that at least. H says, do you think we go to the astral when we die? You don't go anywhere. You never go anywhere. Never. Just trust me on that. Where does your attention go is the better question. You don't die. You don't go anywhere. When death occurs, it doesn't happen to you. Okay? When death occurs, the divine consciousness that is currently focused upon the being you think you are, to the exclusion of all other beings that you really are, is liberated from at least part of that delusion, because there's no more body to stick around and watch. Sometimes it does for a while. This is why you have traditions in India where, you know, they burn the body right away so that the divine doesn't linger on it. It releases the soul, so to speak. You know, some will bury it right away for the same reason. We lay it to rest so that the divine takes its eyes off this body. You know, why have it suffer watching itself die, right? You don't go anywhere. Your body is not your body. You don't die when that body dies. So your consciousness, the consciousness of the divine, which is really, there's a difference between the word awareness, consciousness, attention, all these words. Consciousness is a feedback. It's like a self-feedback. You can be aware without being conscious. Consciousness is an activity awareness. Consciousness is awareness aware of itself, or awareness aware of being aware. Then there are different degrees of consciousness. Mortal incarnate consciousness is what you're experiencing right now. You are limited to this mortal dream, this mortal delusion of who you are. This thing is a simulacrum. And this simulacrum represents indirectly the noumenal reality of what you are, the divine itself. So it's not that this just isn't real, like this. It's not that this isn't real. There is something here. It's just, it's not a bottle. It looks like a bottle, but it's not actually a bottle. Okay. What this actually is the divine like everything else. It's just coming at you in the bottle shape. You see it as a bottle, but it's not. The astral, so there's different models you can look at this from. My model is that there is a real reality, there is a material and a spiritual. Material and spiritual are just two extreme reflections of the same source. It's not that it goes material, spiritual, divine in a layer. It's more like divinity, material, and spiritual, or whichever hand you want to put it on. There's divinity, material, spiritual. Let's do it like that. Right hand, material, left hand, spiritual. What's left in the middle? It looks like nothing, but it's not nothing, it's everything. Okay? So it's two sides of the same coin. They go together. They cannot be separated. People go, oh, well, there's a spirit world and a material world, and they're separate. They're not separate. They are both reflections of the same source. They look separate when you look at the one to the exclusion of the other. But have you ever seen it? Let's put it like this. The spirit is all form, right? The material is all substance, right? Isn't that how it's usually broken down in most metaphysics? Have you ever seen a substance that did not have a form? Have you ever seen a form that had no substance? No. Neither one of those are possible. Even if that substance is formless, amorphous, it's still an amorphous form. Get it? There's still something. There's still some sort of a shape to it. It just may be a chaotic one. That's still a shape, guys. There's still a form to it. Has there ever been a form that has no substance to it? Well, no, because if it had no substance to it, it wouldn't look like anything, feel like anything. You'd have no concept of it. Can you imagine a sphere made of nothing? What does that even look like? Just a space? There's a sphere there, I swear. Well, if you can see it, it's made of something. Even if it's just made of thoughts, it's made of something. It's made of something substantial. So, spirit and materiality are reflections of the source itself, the divine itself. The divine would be what? Well, it's an enigmatic oblivion. It looks like nothing to a mortal being because it is everything all at once. Everything all at once looks like nothing. What do all numbers at the same time add up to? Infinity. Infinity is an irrational number. It doesn't look like anything. What does all the colors of the rainbow look like at once? Pure light. So the divine is like a nothingness, but it's not a nothingness that is like literal nothing. It is nothing in the no thing, no hyphen thing. It is thinglessness. Ajna says substance is void, but void doesn't mean what it sounds like. Void it's a paradox. Even empty space is something, right? Science knows this. Science knows that empty space doesn't exist. There's no such thing as space with nothing in it. That doesn't exist. Space is the thing that exists. It's not just a stage. In fact, the newer forms of physics are starting to realize that matter is just a really condensed part of space. Like space crunched up until it becomes material stuff. It's not that stuff is floating in space, it's that stuff is space. That is the Tesla style of ether, right? That's what we're really talking about. Scientists are finally using quantum fields. Once they finally unite all the different quantum fields together into a single unified field, then they're talking about the aether, and that is their goal. So it will happen eventually. They'll figure it. They'll stop being douches about the aether. They'll eventually accept it. And the aether is the materialistic, mortal understanding of that void or that oblivion or that no-thingness. It's like the surface of the ocean, right? If it's waving, you see waves, but there are no actual waves on the ocean. You see things that look like waves, but waves are not things. They're an activity of the ocean. Yep, you can call it Ein Sof, Cody. Yep. You can call it Ein Sof. You can call it the monad and the pleroma. You can call it Brahman and Achman. You can call it anything you want. Ein Sof is just as good a word. In fact, Ein Sof, Kabbalah comes after or alongside Neoplatonism, which comes after or alongside Advaita Vedanta. So nothingness as you wrote it does not exist. No, nothingness is not real. No thingness. I'll type it like this. Here, watch. No thingness. Boop. Really contemplate the way that's written. What does that even mean? It means chaos. The original meaning of the word KO. K-H-A-O-S. KO. The original word meant gap, void, oblivion, no thingness, not just disorder, not just like taking a handful of something and scattering it. It means you can't identify it. Eddie, put the hyphen in the nothing. Ein should be no thing. But yeah, Eddie's more of a resident expert on Kabbalah than I am. I look at Kabbalah and I go, okay, this is a really complicated way of explaining the same thing that I understand from Advaita Vedanta and other stuff. It's like really, I don't know how to put this. I'm trying to put it in a funny metaphor. It's like it's overcomplicating it, right? It's like enlightenment with extra steps. It's not that it's not good. I'm learning to appreciate it. I can't get into Kabbalah. I just can't. I look at it and I go, yeah, that's cool. And it's like, I don't feel it. I don't feel drawn to it. It's been mysticized. I mean, it's as a mysticism, it's great, but I think it gets too literalized. And I think that's what draws me away from it, is people treat it too literally. And they get all worked up about like, oh, you got to take this tunnel and the tunnel's a set and the this and the that. And it's like, all right, this is really cool metaphors. It's really great, but it's just not my thing. Just not my thing. I get it why people like it. It's just, to me, it didn't require all that. Like, I feel like that's too much left brain for me. Maybe I'm just crazy though. Look, like they say, there's Buddhist ways for Buddhists and there's rock ways for rocks. There's different ways for everything. And my way just wasn't Kabbalah. But if you do comparative esotericism, if you do comparative religion, comparative mythology, you're going to see that they're all connected and pointing at the same truth. They point a little bit differently, but they're all looking at the same everything. They're all pointing at the same source truth, and that is why they all seem so simple, so similar. Very good, Hades. Yeah, it's so even just trying to picture eternity, what do you see? You see, what does all time look like at the same time? It's madness. You can't even imagine it. It looks like nothing. Like literal no-thingness. It looks like unconsciousness. You know, try to put your brain into everything. You see nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean no hyphen thing. It's incomprehensible. Not because your brain's not big enough, but because such a thing doesn't fit in the brain. The brain is something inside that. The brain is inside eternity. You know, the mind is inside eternity, not the other way around. We're definitely talking about bigger subjects now. Like, I really need to, like, I feel like we need to start the stream over. Anybody who watches my streams enough knows that every stream devolves into a non-dual rant about eternity, nothingness, what you really are. Like, fuck spirits. Like, as cool as they are, that's, like, I got to get more into doing talks about spirits, though. That's like where my bread and butter of my audience retention is. But where the bread and butter of me is, it's in understanding these big picture questions. Hector, he said, the meaning of life is a potato chip sandwich. Yeah. So, okay, I will remind everybody, if you are in the, Newark, New Jersey area on the 30th of September, I'm going to be making an appearance at the QXT's nightclub for the Iron Garden, which is a monthly event where they have occultists and other artists of similar interest, pagans and stuff like that, come together and we do presentations. So I'm going to be doing an official presentation with Iron Garden on the 30th at QXT's in Newark. And afterwards, I will be hanging out at the club until they kick us out or it gets boring or whatever. And so this is a meetup. Eddie's going to be there. Fleshy's going to be there. My wife's going to be there. Lamia's going to be there. A bunch of people are going to be there. So if you're in the neighborhood at that time or can get there, come on down and hang out. It's only like $30 for the night. I think it's like $20 for the one part and 10 for the other. So it's really, really cool. I'm hoping it's going to be fun. If it sucks, I have a hotel room around the corner. We could always go hang out there if it's really sucky. Now, on the flip side of that, do not miss this coming Thursday's stream. There's going to be some shenaniganery going on. Should be an exciting stream. I don't know if it's going to be a daytime stream or a nighttime stream. If you have to catch it on the repeats, that's fine. But try not to miss this Thursday's stream. It's going to be one for the ages, I have a feeling. So unless, you know, watch, now it'll be like a total rain out or something. But yeah, check it out this Thursday. And I will be recording my part of the event on Friday, hopefully. I'll probably hand my phone or one of my phones to my wife or something. She can record it. But only my part, because the way this event works is you got to get permission from who you're recording. And I'm not going to ask everyone to ask everybody. So just going to be recording my part for sure. And I will be most likely recording stuff from the night so that there's something to put up, probably like hangouts, maybe meeting people, that kind of stuff. So that'll be going up later, of course. Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a hike. We got some people, Hades, coming from like 8-9 hours away. So you'd be in good company if you did. But yeah, no pressure, man. It's about 2 hours for me, just to put it in perspective. So I'm out here on Long Island. So and Kabbalah is just repurposed Neoplatonism, man. I mean, that's one way to look at it. It's heavily influenced, like they interrelate, you know. I don't know if I can make it to St. Peter's. That sounds like a bit of a hike for me, but hey, you know what? One of these days, like if I get more famous and rich and stuff, you never know. Travel the world, you know. I'd love to do a yearly like meetup symposium somewhere where like eventually it gets to be this big thing where hundreds of people show up and we have presentations and all that. Probably like what Iron Garden's doing, I have a feeling, but more our crew, not necessarily, no offense to their crew, but more our crew, you know? So. I think I was just talking about me making it sound like it's a bad thing. I'm not into the Kabbalah. I'm just not. I like Neoplatonism better. It's just me. There's nothing wrong with Kabbalah. I'm just more into Neoplatonism it's like I'm going to skip the one part and go to the source of it. What's up, Spirit Diesel? Appreciate that. Thank you for the $2.99 and the horns, man. Thank you. A cult camp. Yeah. We're going to have a cult summer camp. For adults only, of course. And Eddie's going to be, I think we're going to have a goth Amish section for those who like that stuff. I don't know. That's, you know, H brings up the Yahweh Jehovah thing. I will say that there's different ways of approaching that. Yahweh in the deity form is the demiurge. Yahweh in the non-deity form is sort of a step away from the monad. So the monad is anything that says I am, that's an egoistic entity, right? There's a little ego going on there. The absolute divine doesn't do that. The absolute divine doesn't worry about whether it exists or not. It just exists and it's content in its existence. But the monad might not say it, but like, you know, the nous might say it, the nous might say it. So it really depends on your modality of how you like to structure these things. Me personally, I don't like basing things too much on Christianity or Hellenism or any of that stuff too much either. It's one of the reasons why I'm so self-originating with my mythologies. I look at history, I look at what I like, and then I reinterpret and I repurpose, and I sort of create a new thing around it that's palatable to people who like those other things. But it's sort of, I don't want to say secularizes, but it sort of de-dogmatizes it. Like, I try to de-dogmatize everything. So it's really hard to do Kabbalah without some dogmatic stuff in there. For me. Some people don't have a problem with it. For me, it's hard. That's my own issue. It's my own failing. It's not the failing of the... It's kind of like saying, I don't like jujitsu, you know, because I like BJJ better. You know, that's not true, but it's like saying that. It's not that jiu-jitsu doesn't work and BJJ works better. It's just that I prefer one. It's like that. Yeah, Eddie said it right. Any system, east or west, is a toolbox for understanding the work. None of them are true or false. They're all useful to your point. So the way I keep saying it is I use the Zen statement. It's all just a finger pointing at the moon. In my opinion, there's a handful of fingers that seem to point more directly at the moon than others. Okay? In my experience, either using or looking, like exploring, some point at the moon, but they go about it in a roundabout way. Like they're a little bit more creative about it. And so I don't include those, even though they're valid ones. Like the Necronomicon, ironically enough, will eventually point you to the moon. I don't mean that literally. I mean that in the figurative sense. It will eventually point you to the truth. It's just you got to go through all the planets to get there. Okay. So I don't count that as like one of those good ones. The ones that I think point directly at the truth, a finger pointing at the moon, as Zen would put it, are, well, things like Zen, anything that's an offspring of the non-dual or monist philosophies of India. So that's Advaita Vedanta, original Buddhism, you know, Chan Buddhism to a great, you know, Chan Zen Buddhism to a great degree. Not anymore. Modern Zen is like, it's like a bunch of people with a fetish for meditating. That's not the same thing. But the original philosophy, like original Buddhism, really. Original Buddhism, original Chan, they all point at the moon very effectively. Advaita Vedanta, Neoplatonism, and Kabbalah would be admittedly a good one if you can get through all the complexity of Kabbalah, which compared to Advaita Vedanta is very complicated. The Rite of Adante is just like, this is what you are. Boom, 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 boom. Done, done, done. You don't need to go like through all these Sephira and all this shit. Neoplatonism is a bit of a brain bender because of the way it arranges things, but it's good. Alchemy can actually get you there too. It's just not as obvious. Kabbalah, and probably I would almost say Gnosticism, but Gnosticism's more useful as a metaphor or an allegory. It's not really a good model, because Gnostics believe that the material world is evil and that we're supposed to escape from it, and that the demiurge is evil and bad and anything. It's very much wrapped up in dualism, and I don't do that one. But Gnosticism as a mythology or as a metaphor, I love. The Matrix is Gnosticism, like one way of explaining Gnosticism. Matrix is that. It's like an updated, modernized Gnosticism. Luciferianism works very well with a Gnostic mythology wrapped around it. How I do my Luciferianism is to see it as Lucifer in not opposition, but in contrast to the demiurge, right? So one's a light bringer, one is an ignorance, maker. And then I engage with those things. So yeah. Anyway, guys, I think that's it. My voice is starting to go. So once again, September 30th, QXT's in Newark. Make sure you don't miss this Thursday stream. If you love my work, click the link in the description of this video, buy some crap, make my day. Let me see those numbers go up so I can actually take a day off work if I need to. And, I used to make a living off this. Now I'm just doing this stuff for a little extra because the world went insane and everything went crazy. So it is what it is. No regrets. I do it for fun now. This is probably the best way for it to be. So, all right, guys. Yeah, that's it. Until next time, mind the shadows.